Hey everybody, and thank you for doing your daily sign-in into the world of video games. Today, we're gonna be discussing the Game Awards nominees. And the reason we wanna be going over them is because there's a few specific selections in there that brought about a lot of discussion in the gaming industry, so I wanna bring up some topics there. Then, we're gonna be discussing Sony's Jim Ryan denies, or it's not denies, he just says that there is no storage issue on the PS5. Even though that's something that we talked about yesterday, so I want to reiterate on that and talk a bit more about that. And then, last but not least, we're going to talk about the fact that XQC was banned once again from Twitch. He's a popular Twitch streamer, but he got banned for stream sniping, which I found fascinating. More on that on your daily sign-in. Alright everybody, let's get started with the first piece of news, and that is the Game Award nominations are upon us. As you can see here, there is the 2020 nominees got posted today on the Game Awards website. As always, you can find this in the description if you're watching this on the YouTubes, or if you're hearing this on podcast services around the globe. So, Game of the Year, obviously that's the main one that people want to be talking about, and here the first 6 nominations that we see are Doom Eternal, I don't know why I said it like that, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and The Last of Us Part 2. 3 PlayStation exclusives right here, or at least PlayStation exclusive for now. I'm not sure about Final Fantasy VII Remake. 1 Nintendo exclusive, which took the world by storm when it came out, given that it was around the time of the pandemic too. This seemed to be the game that everybody was talking about. There's even a talk show specifically for Animal Crossing New Horizons. And 2 cross-platform games. Doom Eternal, I actually haven't played that one. That's the one that surprised me a little bit, but just from the chatter that I hear, I actually haven't played this. And Hades, I did hear a lot of chatter about it, so I'm happy that it got the recognition there. Now, among all the nominations, I'm not going to go through them one by one, but a lot of nominations, we can see that Naughty Dog's The Last of Us Part 2 is the biggest winner, since it has 11 nominations overall. Then Hades and Ghost of Tsushima are like next ones. They're like 7 nominations each. But here are some of the thoughts that I wanted to discuss. So first of all, 2 of the other games that took the world by storm in terms of popularity or its streaming popularity are Fall Guys and Among Us, right? Among Us is technically a 2018 game. I'm trying to find it over here. But it got nominated for a few categories. For example, Best Mobile Game, Among Us is in there. Then we got another nomination, which I believe is Best Multiplayer Game. It also got a nomination right there and there. Now, the question becomes, can a game that technically came out a while back in 2018 be nominated for this year's Game Awards? And I think it's from a player point of view, I think it makes sense, given that even though it got released back in the day, it didn't actually get the chatter and recognition until somebody actually picked it up, and it became one of the most talked games this year. It became very popular, not only among the core gamers, but gamers overall. Like, even Miss Funny Games really likes to play that a lot, and she doesn't game quite that much, not well, much. So I think personally that it makes sense. It makes sense to talk about the game awards as a recognition on the year of gaming, not necessarily of like specifically of what games came out, which kind of makes the point of are the game awards objectively what makes a game the best game of that year. And I don't think you should ever take anything that has to do with reviews and awards or anything like that to face value, meaning I don't think there's anything that would say this game is objectively the best game. Because what does objectively mean? Again, games are different for everybody. People like to play games for different reasons, and people like to play games in many different ways. Some people like to experiment and play many different games, while some other people just focus on one. So for what makes a game of the year on that sense? Now, talking about a little bit more about that, I believe that there were a lot of talks on games that came out way back, but got basically talked about this year. So overall, I don't think you cannot take these points on face value. You need to take a step back and see what is my own personal game of the year. So it also takes a step back and talk about what is the purpose of the Game Awards? The purpose of the Game Awards to me is to have a conversation and bring about some hype within the gaming industry. It's a way to look back at everything that you have experienced throughout your own gaming year, and also about the chatter that has been going around in the gaming world, given that gaming is not only localized anymore to just you playing on your console at home, is actually being able to expand further than that. We got YouTube, we got Twitch streaming, we got esports. Gaming is such a big space now that it's hard to basically pinpoint what is objectively the best game. So even though you look at the game nominations and everything, keep in mind that everybody has their own game. Not necessarily because one game wins Game of the Year, that necessarily is going to be your own personal Game of the Year. One of the nominations here, for example, is The Last of Us 2. And I remember that game got a lot of chatter when it came out. That's one game that I have avoided spoilers for. I am actually very excited to play it at some point. But I remember that the story was very hit and miss, or the game itself was very hit and miss for a lot of people. It's either was really good and they thought this is actually just Game of the Year for sure, or it was like, oh, I didn't actually like it. The way that they were doing the narration storytelling is not really grabbing me. Or some people even say this is not really a game. This is more of an interactive movie, which at the end of the day is an interactive movie a game. That's all the questions that you can ask for yourself. At the end of the day, keep in mind, the Game of the Year is all about bringing together hype. It's a way to look back, bring the industry together. That's when a lot of developers and people actually connected. Now, given the global pandemic, that's not a thing that will probably happen this year, but at the very least, it gives us a point of conversation, and it also shows a lot of other reveals, and it's an opportunity to look back. The last point that I wanted to bring up when it comes to the Game Awards is technically this will happen on December 10, which means that the votes and everything, the critics will need to get together way before that to make sure that they hit on all the different categories. Do you think that is a bit soon? Obviously, there are a lot more implications, and the producer of this, which is Jeff Keighley, has his reasons as to why it needs to be on that year, and probably has a lot more information than I personally do. But it also keeps you thinking. It's like, first of all, does having it the 10th of December give opportunity for people to actually go and play? A lot of the big time for playing video games happens over the holiday season, just because that's when a lot more people are actually freed up, that have the time to actually go through some of these games. So I believe they actually pushed the date a little bit further, whether it's January or February, to allow people to actually experience some of these games, and it gets the games that actually got released right after, which I believe this is the same day that Cyberpunk 2077 comes out, so it doesn't get part of this year's game nomination. It's part of the next year's nomination. So does that kind of hurt Cyberpunk? Do you think it's fair? That happened to Star Wars The Last Jedi for last year's, and technically it got counted for this year, but given that it's almost a 13-month-old game, does it fare against some of the newer ones, or do you think that's fair? Lots of questions, lots of things to think about, but certainly I really like this topic of the Game of the Year because it just provides conversation. So let me know what you think by writing on the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube, or by joining the Discord if you want to. Or just remember the good old times of email where you do it's allfunandgamestv@gmail.com. Alright, that's a lot of talk about the Game Awards. Let's go ahead and switch gears a little bit and talk about PlayStation 5's hardware. And by that I mean the storage. So yesterday we had a little bit of a conversation whether we already talked about the fact that the OS and the actual usable storage for the PS5 is a lot lower than what it shows in the box. Obviously, takes some resources to actually have the PS5 running. So now the other part that we talked about is the next generation. As games become bigger and bigger, we already have Call of Duty, Warzone, or Black Ops is also becoming quite huge. We got games like Cyberpunk potentially taking 2 discs to actually play, meaning 70 gigabytes minimum. and you're dealing with around 600 to 700 gigabytes of storage for all your videos, your screenshots, your games, your save data, everything like that. We will have a storage problem for the next generation, meaning that you're gonna have to buy more hard drive space, and that's gonna become the standard. Well, Jim Bryan had something to comment about it. This is coming from Destructoid. It says, the title of this story is called Sony's Jim Bryan Isn't Hearing PS5 Storage Complaints. It comes from Destructoid by Chris Moyes. Is saying, while Sony's shiny new PlayStation 5 hardware is not out in the open, many owners are finding that modern video games, with their avaricious desire to storage space, are fast filling up their SSDs just a scant week after launch. But in a recent interview with The Telegraph, PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan stated that Sony is unconcerned about the issues, confident that the PS5 storage capacity is adequate for most players. We're not hearing that, quote unquote, says Ryan. Quote, we'll obviously watch what happens as people unbox their PlayStations and start using them. We think we'll be okay. We obviously are able to monitor hard drive usage on the PS4 microscopically, and everything that we saw there indicates we should be fine. Quote. So, this brings an interesting topic because it may be just a lot of chatter about whether or not a lot of people, for the average consumer, how many games do you actually have on your PS5? Obviously, you things like Cold War taking a lot of storage, and other game as a service there. You might want to have in your storage readily available in case you want to jump in with your friends. Those games will potentially live in your console for a long time. But in terms of what your main game or things that you want to experience, how often do you actually have to go delete and re-download data? A lot of people, given the people, it's worth noting that the people that get the consoles at the beginning are the early adopters, and they are the hardcore gamers, and most likely are the ones that are installing a huge variety of games, especially given the amount of games that are readily available right now with launch titles. So maybe it's just a issue for a certain section. According to Jim Ryan, they have a lot of data and they think they will be fine. We'll see as the story goes along. I personally think, for my own personal gaming endeavors, I do play a lot of games, and I do have a lot of games readily available when I want to jump in with friends. So I do think that for me specifically, it's going to become a challenge. Now, whether or not that turns to be the problem for most people, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But it's just finishing up a little bit more about PlayStation, essentially. I believe that there is a God of War rumor, or not a God of War rumor, but essentially this comes from Eurogamer by Emma Kent. PlayStation's boss dodges God of War Ragnarok PS5 exclusivity question. So now, if we think about it, a week after the PS5 release in the US and other regions, we are on the verge of finally seeing Sony's new console launch in the UK. And as we enter the crossover period for console generations, questions are being asked about exactly which titles will be exclusive to the PlayStation 5. In an interview this week with Telegraph, PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan refused to confirm PlayStation 5 exclusivity for the God of War sequel, explaining he had nothing to say about that. So obviously, right now, we got a few big heavy hitters, such as Spider-Man Miles Morales, we got Little Big Planet, and then we also know that Horizon 2 is also going to be a cross-gen experience, meaning you're going to play it on PS4 and PS5. We know games that are specifically for PS5, Ratchet and Clank, we got Demon's Souls, and even Astro. Obviously, Astro is a little bit of a edge case because of the demo. Demon's Souls is probably to showcase the visibility, especially because you can technically get it on the PS3. And the last one would be Ratchet and Clank, because it seemed to be loading and unloading things very rapidly, going through the levels. So they may be very specific for that. Now, whether God of War is actually going to come in and be a PS5 exclusive, we don't know yet. Whether that also brings the question, do you think that doing games on the previous generation, or releasing games on the previous generation, has issues when it comes to pushing the tech to its limits, meaning it limits the creativity of the game because they are bound by a bottleneck that existed from technology from 7 to 8 years in the past. Well, 8 years when the game probably comes out, 7 years now. to me, it obviously has an impact. We already saw it with the speculations that the reason that Cyberpunk got delayed a little bit is because of current gen, or I guess old gen now, if you think about it, consoles, the copies for them. That's what was holding the game back and being released. And I know from working on other games in the past, usually you have a certain team allocated to make sure that anything that you do is optimized to fit on the lower spec consoles. And in this case, it will be the PlayStation 4. So even though you want to push as much as you can, visually, sometimes you're constricted by the data. So I do personally think that it holds a little bit of the tech back, whether that's a problem financially, potentially, meaning you have so many people on the PlayStation 4 ecosystem already, that it will be a shame to leave them out of the next generation of the next God of War just because they're not able to actually upgrade just quite yet. And right now, obviously, we have an issue with pre-orders and shortages of specific consoles. But hopefully, I hope that by the time that you actually go get the God of War, that is no longer an issue. But whether or not you have the financial means to actually go in and buy the next generation and buy yourself a nice TV that actually matches up, it's a lot to ask for the normal consumer. So it's obviously a balancing act between getting the most people to actually play your game versus pushing the boundaries of what a game can do to attract players. I found it fascinating. I don't know the financial side of it. I just know a little bit more about the tech side. And now, last but not least, let's discuss the fact that XQC, which is a popular Twitch streamer, has actually been banned from Twitch for a temporary ban of 7 days, 6-month ban from Twitch Rivals, which is their tournament-based hosting that they do for certain different games. And he actually won a little bit of a cash prize on the last Twitch Rivals that he has actually needs to give up now because of this thing. The reason that I wanted to bring this up is because XQC obviously has been known to basically be suspended for various other reasons. Like this comes, for example, from PC Gamer by Andy Chalk. XQC has been suspended from Twitch for stream sniping in Fall Guys. So if you don't know Fall Guys, a personally favorite of mine, here I'll show you a little bit of a trailer, is the Bean chaotic platformer battle royale, you can call it, finished to the race line. And Twitch basically held a little bit of a tournament which he participated, and obviously he has been suspended previously. So he's been suspended from professional Overwatch play and Twitch streaming in the past for homophobia, racism, persistent abusiveness, and sharing inappropriate content on stream. But this most recent event came about because he was caught stream sniping in Fall Guys. So interesting. Obviously, all the other suspensions aside, we will talk specifically about the stream sniping one. Nobody likes to get stream snipe, especially when you are such a big streamer. But the fact that the reason that he mentions he did it, specifically in this tweet, which he tweeted and says, "What I did had no impact on the outcome, but it was wrong. Sorry again, I wasn't trying to cheat out of malice, I was trying to entertain. 7-day suspensions for now, ride like lightning, crash like thunder, go again. P.S. Giving my winning to charity and I'll match it." So it's it's always those kind of apologies that is like, yes, I apologize, but at the same time, I didn't mean anything like it. Yeah. At the same time, it's interesting that he got banned. A lot, obviously, their supporters are saying that the reason that he got banned, it's unfair. It's just a game. Like, imagine getting banned for a bean game, but it's against TOS. It's against the rules. It's against what people want to have, especially during tournaments. You don't want to be stream sniped by another streamer, which is essentially trying to cheat, especially when you are in a tournament with so high, well-known personalities such as Dr. Loop or Shroud, Tyler 1. Obviously, you're going to get called out on that. And again, that brings also the topic of conversation of whether obviously there has been a lot of situation with the MCA and all that sort of stuff where a lot of Twitch streamers have been banned. This is also another temporary ban, while others have been more permanent. What makes a permanent ban versus a temporary ban? Does it have to do with also your levels of popularity? I am not sure. I'm not too much involved in that world. I just find it interesting that thank you for actually being held accountable for cheating on a tournament, even though you are technically one of their highest assets on the platform, since he's potentially, if not the highest viewed streamer at the moment. So kudos to that. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on your daily signing into the world of video games. Again, we come at you every single day at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and by day I mean weekday. Don't expect anything on the weekends. But if you missed that, remember you can catch us on YouTube by going into It's All Fun and Games. Everything will be in the description if if you're hearing this on podcast services, which you can catch by searching Daily Signing. Remember, we also, after we do all of this, we also have another podcast called Chat and Games, your weekly gaming show, where I'm joined by the sexy boys in the business that we discuss other areas of gaming, and we talked about postmortems of certain games. And after that, not only do we do all of that, we also go and stream, play some games. Right now we're playing Genshin Impact, since that's the game that's been catching our eyes. So keep an eye on all of that. And with that, I leave you with your daily sign up.